you were hearing them talking about this panacea called the procurement legislation. When we came in, we said this law, even though it's passed in the parliament, it has serious flaws. And we went to the parliament twice in trying to refine the law. We went twice to amend it to make it more usable and more practical. Every time we go to the parliament to do that, we are accused of watering down the law, up to the point where they accused me as Prime Minister of not wanting to have procurement legislation, as if we don't have any. We still have Centers Board actors in place. And of course, because we want to have our way in awarding contracts and whatever, all of a sudden they're concerned about awarding contracts because they expect us to behave the way they behave. So the law, there was a clamor. Proclaim the law, proclaim the law, proclaim the law. I am in the parliament telling the cabinet, let us proceed. At one point I gave March of the year as to when it was going to be proclaimed. We still couldn't get it to a point where we think it was workable. But in the end, I could tell you in response largely to public demand, we said we'll proclaim it. But we know that we have to come back to the parliament to make certain adjustments. One of the adjustments we have to make, which come up to us starkly now, the law is proclaimed, the law is in place. You cannot now do any business with anybody inside of 2 months, in most cases. Because if you want to do any business with big, medium, or small contractor, you have to go out for tender, either sole or selective or open, and then you have to wait for a month for people to respond. And then you have to go through 2 processes of evaluation and, what's the other one? And advisory committee. And that does not distinguish between a bale of toilet paper, a case of water, and a highway. Now, fellow citizens, surely that is not the law that we really want. The other day, we wanted to buy a couple dozen flowers like that from a company to put in front of the diplomatic center to prepare it for our guests. So you can't do that because the process doesn't allow you to do it within 2 to 3 weeks. And of course, the person you want it from, like most small business and many medium business in the period, have not been registered. Today, the law is, unless you are registered with the procurement depository, and unless you have your tax certificate up to date, you cannot do business with the state, including your NIS certificate, which expires in 30 days, of course. But the procedure is about 50 or 60 days. So even if I just start out with a certificate from NIS that is good, it expires before the end of the tender period. Now, what kind of situation is that? We have to come back to the parliament to amend it. In the meantime, there's a clause in the law that says that in situations like where exigencies demand that you act, but you don't have that time period to do what you need to do, like when the water pipe broke the other night up the road, the Minister of Finance could grant an exemption to allow you to do it. Now, that is the law. But the law has another part that says, if you want to grant that exemption, you have to come to the parliament for it to be debated and voted upon. So I discovered that the toilet had no paper. And we need a bale of paper. It's a big ministry. And of course, it will take 2 months for that contract to be awarded. But in the meantime, in the 2 months period, I presume you could bring a roll of paper from home. But that is only toilet paper. There are other things you can't bring from home. And the bottom line is, the opposition is saying that the Minister of Government, who got his job by swearing to an oath of office and being elected by Diego Martin, Northeast, and the country to represent you is not good enough to represent you to buy a bale of toilet paper because he's a thief and he must go through this process of 2 months to acquire it. But I'm saying, not all of us are thieves and scamps. We not to wear their corn in their bushel. You have elected people to represent you. You give them authority and you hold them accountable in the normal, sensible way. So the government has realized that there is what they are now calling an error in the law. And we now realize that we have government to run in the days and weeks and months ahead. So we now know exactly what the government has to do because we are a sensible, responsible government. And as a result of that, today I have directed the leader of government business to recall the parliament on Wednesday of next week. And based on the experiences that we have had and the grinding to a halt that they intend to come in the country, it ain't gonna happen. The government will go to the parliament and we will use the majority that you gave us and we're going to make sensible amendments to the law so that the law can function in the interest of the people of Trinidad and Tobago.